Look at this. This is the new brand identity for the Brazilian Amazon. 9 states, 25,000 km of rivers, 28 million people, one logo. And I want you to understand something before we go any further. AI did not make this, but not for the reason you think. AI did not make this because making this required something that no model has, and I want to spend the next few minutes explaining exactly what that is. Because if you are a canvas artist, a digital illustrator, a designer sitting there wondering whether you still have a place in this world, this answer is your answer too. But first, the part nobody wants to say out loud. Most of the illustration market as it existed 5 years ago is gone or it's going. Stock illustrations, generic character design, quick editorial art, social media graphics, explainer visuals, if it could be described in a prompt and the client is just needed something that looked illustrated, that work is either already replaced or being replaced right now. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this because pretending it isn't happening is worse than facing it. And here is the harder truth underneath that one. Most artists build their entire proposition on the wrong thing. They build it on the output, on the image, on the final file. AI has made output cheap, almost free. So if your answer to why should I hire you was because I can make the beautiful things, that answer no longer closes the deal on its own. Now look back to the Amazonia, the agency that led this project. Future brand Sao Paulo is not from the Amazon. They are professional branding firm and they made something genuinely extraordinary. But here's what they did that AI cannot do. They spent years studying the territory. They engaged residents, workers, artists and community representatives from all the 9 states. They asked what the Amazon means to the people who live there, not what it looks from the outside. And then they made a decision that is so simple, it sounds obvious after the fact, but required a human mind sitting with the problem, feeling the weight of representing 28 million people and finding a leap. What if the Amazon wrote its own name? Every letter in that logo is traced from the actual satellite coordinates of the Amazon River and its tributaries. The land wrote its own alphabet, the river became typography. And they didn't stop there. They brought in local illustrator artists from across those 9 states because they understood that the cultural specificity of each region required hands that lived it, not hands that could imitate it. This is not a style decision, this is a philosophical decision, and AI has no philosophy. Let me be very specific here. Because AI cannot replicate human emotion is a lazy argument that's getting weaker. Smart people will call you out on it. Here's what AI generally cannot do, and these 3 things are the foundation of every artist's real future. AI cannot carry cultural memory. The Amazonia illustrators weren't hired because they could draw beautifully. They were hired because their visual references, the colors they instinctively reach for, the patterns they grew up seeing, the way they understand light in that specific geography, that is knowledge you cannot prompt your way into. AI has seen images of the Amazon. It has never been rained on by it. AI cannot feel the weight of consequence. When future brands sat down to design this identity, they knew if they got this wrong, they had been reducing one of the most complex ecosystems and cultures on the planet to a tourist postcard. That pressure, that responsibility shaped every decision. AI has no stakes. It cannot feel the difference between representing something and misrepresenting it. AI cannot ask the questions that changes everything. What if the Amazon wrote its own name? That question is not in a dataset. It came from a human mind that had been sitting with the problem long enough, with enough context, with enough empathy to make a connection that wasn't obvious. AI generates answer. It doesn't ask the questions that reframes the entire brief. Now I want to talk directly to 2 different groups of people because your paths forward are real, but they are different and they each have a story that proves it. Your position is harder. I won't pretend otherwise. You work closest to what AI does technically, and that means the competition is most direct. But there is a man who figured this out long before AI was ever a conversation. His name is Christoph Niemann. Niemann has made dozens of covers for The New Yorker and the New York Times magazine. He is one of the most recognized illustrators alive, and when you look at his work, you immediately understand why AI cannot replicate it. Not because of its style, but because of the thinking behind it. Niemann himself said this: it's about the concept, it's about an idea, and then finding the perfect style to bring the idea to life. He doesn't think of himself as a style executor, he thinks of himself as a concept generator who then decides what tools to use. His Fukushima New Yorker cover, a cherry tree branch where the blossoms are replaced by nuclear radiation symbols, took 48 hours to make. The concept is devastating, simple, inevitable, and it required someone who had been alive during that moment in history, who felt the cultural weight of cherry blossom in Japan, who understood what that symbol means to those people. You cannot prompt your way into that. Not because AI can draw a cherry tree, but because AI doesn't understand what it means to be Japanese and watch Fukushima unfold. That is the gap. Concept rooted in lived cultural intelligence, not style, not execution, thinking. Your roadmap as a digital artist and illustrator. Move from execution to concept ownership. Your most valuable skill is now the decision about what should be made, not the making of it. If someone gives you a brief and you just execute it, you are in a vulnerable position. If you walk in and say, here is the idea, you are not. Build a body of work with a worldview, not just a consistent style. Style is surface, worldview is depth. What do you notice that others don't? What do you care about? What cultural knowledge do you carry that is yours alone? This is your moat. Use AI as a concept exploration tool, not a shortcut to output. The digital illustrators winning right now are using AI to test 20 directions fast and then bringing their specific judgment and cultural intelligence to decide which direction actually means something. Specialize in cultural specificity. The Amazonia project needed artists who were from there. Who are you from? What community, geography, subculture do you understand at a depth that a model trained on the entire internet does not? Make your thinking visible. Show process. Show the concept before the execution. Clients who understand what they are paying for will pay more for the mind, not just the hand. You are in the most defensible position of any visual creative right now, and most of you don't know it. Here's why. A physical painting is not an image. It is an object. It has texture, presence, provenance, time. You cannot prompt a canvas into existence. You cannot own an AI image the way you own a painting. But here's the trap many canvas artists fall into, treating the physicality as enough. It isn't. A technically excellent painting of a landscape is still a commodity, even if it's made with the real paint. The physical medium protects you from AI replication. It does not protect you from irrelevance. So let me tell you about Jitish Kallat. Kallat is one of the India's most significant contemporary painters. He grew up in Mumbai, and his work is inseparable from that city. Its chaos, its density, its mortality, its contradiction. His paintings are full of newspaper fragments, crowd data, traffic patterns, the names of the dead. They look like Mumbai feels. You could describe his work to an AI in perfect detail and it would produce something that looks vaguely similar in style. But it would have no weight, because the weight in Kallat's painting doesn't come from the brushwork. It comes from a man who has walked those streets for decades, who has absorbed the specific human density, who is making an argument about what it means to live and die in that city. His work has a thesis, not a subject, not a style, a thesis, something it is actually saying about the world. That is the Amazonia question applied to a canvas. The logo said, the Amazon write its own name. Kallat's painting says, Mumbai write its own obituary. Both are impossible without the person behind them. Your roadmap as a canvas artist. Stop selling paintings. Start selling your eye. Your specific way of seeing the world is the product. The canvas is just where it lives. Collectors and institutions don't buy skilled hands, they buy irreplaceable perspectives. Build a thesis, not just a body of work. What is your work actually saying? Not the subject, not the style. What argument is it making about the world? If you can answer that in one clear sentence, you have something that cannot be replicated. Make your process visible and part of the value. Document it. The hours, the decisions, the revisions, the failures. That story is part of what people are buying. The physicality of your process is proof of something AI cannot offer. Move towards culturally and personally specific commissions. a community mural, a portrait of a family in their home, a painting that only exists because you were present in that place at that moment with that history. The more specific and personal the brief, the safer you are. Build relationships with institutions, not just collectors, galleries, cultural organizations, communities, projects. These are the clients who need human artists for reasons that go beyond aesthetics. They need authorships, accountability, cultural legitimacy, things only a person can provide. I want to end where we started, with this logo, with rivers that became letters. No AI generated this. Not because AI lacks technical skills, but because making this requires a team of humans to spend years understanding a place, feeling the responsibility of representing it, building trust with the people who live there, and then asking a question nobody asked before. Christoph Niemann has spent 30 years building a mind that sees the world in a specific, irreplaceable way. Jitish Kallat has spent decades absorbing a city until the city lives in his hand. The local illustrators of the Amazon carry visual knowledge in their bodies that no dataset contains. That is the work. That has always been the work. We just got lazy about calling it that because for a long time, technical execution was rare enough that we could pretend the output was the value. It wasn't. It was never. So here is the question I want you to sit with after this video. If someone asked you what your work is actually about, not the medium, not the style, not the subject, but what it is actually saying about the world, could you answer in one clear sentence? If you can, you have a future. Not an easy one, not a comfortable one, but a real one. If you can't, that's not a crisis, that's a work, and it's more important than learning any new software. Figure out what you have to say, then say it with your own hands, your own specific story, your culture, your irreplaceable point of view. This is something no model, no matter how powerful, will ever be able to generate.